Hello, and welcome to the first invitation to write. It is always important to keep the basics of writing instruction in mind as you move throughout the week. Encourage daily time to write and set expectations, such as what the writing space should look like. Help students understand that writing is a recursive process that involves planning, drafting, receiving feedback, revising, and publishing or sharing. Finally, use mentor texts and models so that students can visualize a finished product. Keep nurturing your community of writers by writing with your students. Day 1. This week, students will explore inquiry-based writing. Before you show them the invitation to write, you might mention that inquiry means asking questions and looking for answers. Sometimes the writer writes about solutions to problems. Through inquiry, we learn many new things, which can be really exciting. In the Students' Lit Lab guidebook, they will receive this week's invitation to write and to move through the steps of the writing process. This week's invitation explains that scientists, engineers, and mathematicians are problem solvers, and so are squirrels. To set the stage, you can say, imagine that you are one of the squirrels in the story this week. You have a problem. You can't get to the feeder. What could you do to solve the problem? In the space below, draw a picture that illustrates your solution. Let's move on to the planning stage. Prior to initiating the planning activity, you might want to show the students examples of some bird feeders. Then, in the space provided in the Students' Lit Lab guidebook, have them sketch a solution to this problem. This week, they will use plain white paper to plan. Read the additional planning ideas aloud to them. Build steps to the feeder, jump from another tree to the feeder, using rope or other materials, pull the feeder down. Be sure to nurture the students' creative problem-solving skills. Model the process for them and share your drawing with them. Encourage the students to share their planning too. Next, students will move on to drafting. When it's time for the students to move from planning to drafting, have them use their composition notebooks. In their notebooks, they will write about how they solved the problem and got to the feeder. Explain that other young engineers can learn from them. When writing with them first, you could start the conversation with, my squirrel had a great idea. He would use the trampoline in the backyard to jump up to the bird feeder. What are some ideas that you can give me to help me start writing? Then, model using the writer's composition notebook to draft. You can show the students your draft and read it aloud. I'm Wally the squirrel, and I really wanted to taste the food in the blue bird feeder. For a couple of days, I watched as the birds landed on it, ate, and flew away happy. What could I do to get to the feeder? I've got it. I'll jump on the trampoline until I'm high enough, and then I'll land on the feeder. I can't wait to taste that yummy food. Students might have time to start this on day 1, but if not, encourage them to work on their drafts as they move through day 2. Day 3. When possible, make time for feedback. On day 3, students can gather feedback from you and their peers. Have the students turn to the feedback guide located on the last page of the Students' Lit Lab guidebook. Using the sentence and question stems provided, or those that have worked well for you in the past, have students ask others to provide praise, questions, or suggestions. You can also prompt students to focus on specific aspects, such as their ideas, vocabulary, design, and/or effort. After students have received feedback or have looked over their writing themselves, give them time to polish their pieces. Revision lists encourage students to focus on a few items to work on. These lists can be added to their composition notebooks or placed on sticky notes or note cards. You can model this process too. For example, the students might encourage me to add whether the plan worked or not, and if it worked, was the food worth it? Finally, on day 3, help students choose a section of their writing to share on day 4. Day 4. Now consider the ways that students can share their writing with their peers. Students can choose to share all or part of their work, and of course, if students are not comfortable sharing, they are not required to do so. Use a designated space that signals the featured author and have peers respond with finger snapping, clapping, or emoji cards. Writing is a joyful act, so be sure to make time for reflection. This is an excellent way to build student self-efficacy and identity, both as a writer and as someone who might pursue a STEM career. Questions could include the following. As a writer, what did you do well this week? What might you try differently next week? Which part of your writing makes you most proud? What did you learn about engineers? Could you imagine yourself becoming an engineer one day? Don't forget to capture students' work, words, and wonderment and add them to the Wakelet. Finally, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.